Welcome to the View from the 8th, Leeds' take on the Allsop Pro Chat. Today with Ceara, Duggan and myself, Jack Robson, we have George Walker with his views on the current market, online sales, is COVID over, where George would spend £2.5 million today, and the weird and wonderful lots he's sold over the years.
Hi Jack, so I sit in the commercial valuation team here in Leeds. I work alongside the London team. In Leeds there's three of us, so you may have heard of Brett Harrison and Sally Beach.
I'm George Walker. I head up the commercial auction team based in London. Of course we cover the UK, increasingly with Leeds because they have stronger views and have lots of people to give us inspiration and ideas and probably get it more right than we do.
And myself, Jack Robson, residential investment agent based out of the Leeds office. George, the View from the 8th, that was your idea. Quite simple one, actually, but not if the listeners don't know where our office is in Leeds. Explain that one, please.
Well, I have to say it's the easiest thing to go right on top of the station. And whenever anyone walks into the Leeds office, obviously the West End office is in Wigmore Street, near Bond Street in London, and everyone says, my God, it's really nice because you've got floor-to-ceiling windows, you are above the train station, really easy to get to, and it's a very prominent, lovely view of Leeds, which... Again, everybody says the same thing when they come from London. Wow, I didn't realise it's so big. There's a lot of going on here, isn't there? A tremendous amount of development.
It is. There's a lot of cranes in the sky, and we can see it all. That's the idea here. Hopefully we can give our views from the corridors of our office. And the autumn statement was quite underwhelming in terms of the property market, George.
Yeah, I think absolutely right.
Did we need a bit of stability compared to last year?
Well, I mean, the poor Chancellor hasn't got a lot of rope, really. There was a lot to talk about cutting taxes, which didn't really materialise, and the poor guy hasn't got a lot of... I think it was pretty benign, but I think I also do reflect on the fact the economy has been through so much the last 5 years and we're still in positive territory. I think that's really strong. Yes, we've had a kicking from inflation. Yes, we've had higher rates. You know, that we could so easily be in a very serious recession, as they are in Germany. We're not. We should celebrate that. The autumn statement was always going to be a very political thing, giving Jeremy Hunt a chance to spread his views. And since then, Rishi's gone into battle on other subjects. They're just trying to make them electable as a party. So I think we have to move on from that and get on what we do best, which is, push this market as hard as we can. We've got a market, it's hard, but leave the politics, the politicians, really.
George, would you say really we've sort of out of the COVID time now in terms of the commercial market?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and on February 2020, I was an auctioneer. We did £72.5 million in the last auction in the West End, and then the whole thing got changed. Whilst I was at home suffering with COVID, Mark and Alex picked up what we had and we went digital in 5 days, both the commercial and residential team. One of the fastest evolutions. 600 lots went to a digital auction. We only put the date back by 1 day, and when we battled on through and there was a market, we continued. We've taken those lessons in London. We are now, the commercial team is fully digital. It's been amazing in how the reach has been increased. Sadly, people don't really want to get together. They all say they do, but they don't. So we do have a presence in an auction room in the residential team. Commercial, because our commercial sales into smaller lot numbers, bigger lot size, people have got very used to bidding remotely.
How have your buyers adapted? Are they happy with it in the main?
Our buyers adapt really quickly. You're thinking, you've got to position yourself in their minds. They're cash rich. They are informed, experienced. They tend to be experienced investors. It doesn't mean they're experienced in property, but they know how to make money because they've got it sitting there. They are happy to buy property. They bought property in March 2020, in May 2020. That was a pretty difficult time. People were genuinely saying, don't send your 10% deposit to Allsop's in case they go bust. This is how bad it was in lockdown, but they've been through that. They understand that we ain't going bust. It's been 120 years, and our clients aren't going bust. They've adapted. They want to buy property. So they'll, you can put them on the side of a motorway on their phone and they'll buy it, and they do.
Right.
They don't really mind about the medium in my market.
Do you think the commercial auctions will go back into the room?
Ceara, I love it. And so will a lot of the team, because there is a moment in our team work pretty hard for about a 6-week slots at a time, then have this end game, which is the auction. And it'd be quite nice to pick ourselves up, dress ourselves up and go to an auction room.
Yeah.
Because it's a very final moment. At the moment, we sit at the same desk and create business, which works very well. I don't think the argument at the moment is very compelling to have a live one. I think a lot of us would really like it because we like seeing buyers, we like seeing sellers, and the buyers and sellers like seeing each other. Mm-hmm. We're still not quite sure how we get them all together. We've offered them free booze, and it doesn't tend to work.
Does it not?
It doesn't tend to, because people have got out of the habit of being in a group of 200-300 people. And we are constantly trying to work out ways of doing it. So communicating via a podcast has been quite useful. We've run our podcast 2 or 3 years, and we always have new people who pop up on that. If there was a magic bullet, I would find it.
So do you think with online sales, is it allowing for more sales during the year? I mean, how many are you doing typically in an average year?
We've gone up to 8 sales now, 8 sales a year. Richard and Stuart and Jordan's team do a few more on the resi side. But Allsop's is up to something like 22 auction days a year, which is, that is assuming they're all single days. So it's probably 25 to 30 auction days a year. That's a heck of a lot. Lots of time to exit your real estate, and increasingly, particularly bigger lot sizes, when the buyers are overlapping, they've got plenty of chance to trade. And I think 25 to 30 days a year is it's quite a lot. It pushes the systems.
So it sounds like obviously you've been having quite a lot of good auctions. And so we're trying to find out sort of what success looks like in the commercial auction world. Of course, it is selling property, but do you record things like the average price achieved? Are you looking at the amount you sold?
Yeah, so the old metric is you start off with a list of 100 lots and how many of you sold them by the end of the auction, and that still applies. It's still a success rate. As digital things that happen, it's easier to withdraw things before the auction so actually the success rate isn't as much of a measure as it used to be, but it's the volume. We like to think that, our competition, the commercial market, has always been the private treaty sector. Obviously, all sorts of a private treaty team, and we work with them very well. But if we do 600 million a year of sales, that's how we measure ourselves, because that's what we're doing. We've done 135 since the beginning of September. That's quite a lot of transactions in a market that's supposed to be moribund. So that's how we measure ourselves. We've become increasingly a platform. The auction process applies to more than half the lots we sell, which is great because people competing with each other in a public environment, in competition, unconditional contract. But we do a lot of brokerage around the side. So, that's where we see ourselves competing very heavily with the private treaty all across the country and complementing it actually in a lot of cases.
It's interesting just linking to private treaty, and I had a quote from yourself, George, pre the October auction, where you said it was going to be a real test because actually you had 35 lots over $1 million.
Yeah.
For me, that might be going towards maybe more private treaties type stuff, in residential investment or commercial investment. Typically, we're dealing with bigger lot sizes. You said at the time that it was going to be a real test to see if your clients have found the price point that working for investors. How did that go?
We did about 22 over $1 million. So, yeah, we got it right in most of the cases. Yes, there are some gaps because there always are in this market, which changes every day. But, we had a couple of examples where, I mentioned private treaty, what you do as private treaty. We had a couple of assets that were on the market earlier with other private treaty agents. And in one case, we concluded a £4.25 million sale in 72 hours from calling for best bids. So that went from best bids to exchange contracts, deposit in our account in 72 hours, £4.25 million. So it went pretty well in some cases. The clients didn't sell their assets. Obviously, they wouldn't say the same. But the private treaty world has coined price discovery because they don't know what it's worth. I think we have to be honest with ourselves. At this stage in the market, we don't really know what things are worth. And so the auction process, when you have a best bid situation, you have 4 or 5 people bidding against each other and you get a chance to sign an unconditional contract, that's probably price discovery, a pretty finite version of it.
You mentioned something as well, so I don't want to bore the listener and bang our drum again, but there is a bit of a hybrid approach there where actually the private treaty team can take on maybe a longer marketing period, which culminates in and hopefully a result at the auction room itself. What do you see the benefits of that?
It's pretty clear, but I would say I'm an auctioneer. If you're in a difficult market, which we are, and you've got an asset out 6 or 8 weeks, and you thought it was worth $5 billion, it doesn't look like it's worth much more than 4.5, but no one's going to quite commit. If you put it into the concentrated phase of an auction, so 2.5 weeks marketing, the buyers love it because the buyers know that's ready to buy. And I've always, over my years, sold auctions as the sellers get unconditional, but actually in our situation where it's a difficult market, you can go to best bids, still not be sure you get it. the buyers love the Allsop badge on a big commercial lot because they know the information's there. It's good information. And if they want to bid, there's a contract ready to be signed before or during the auction or even sometimes after. So I think we're increasingly working with Alex Butler's team down in London, but other firms too, to make these bigger sales happen. And it's worked. It's very effective.
So, George, you do value sort of a mixed bag of commercial.
I don't value anything.
So in our team, well, we value a lot of mixed use properties. Generally, there's a lot of convenience stores or shopping parades where they've got ground floor retail and then you've got resi above. So do you come across any mixed use properties?
Yeah, a lot of what we do is mixed use, the parades, the sort of thing you're talking about. But our buyer always has a mind on the alternative use. So we sold a care home recently. It was over £4 million, and so many of the buyers said, "What's that a foot? What's the planning history? How big's the site?" So if they can't make the care home work because on a short lease, they're trying to think it more into the residential market, the development sites you sell. Jack, what have I got to build? What can I build to improve it? What's my exit price? So yes, we do mixed use, but I was mentioned earlier the crossover, particularly the bigger lots that I sell. The buyers are all looking for the same thing: rate per foot and yield. Yield is not the master anymore. Rate per foot is not the master. It's a combo of the two.
Right. Okay.
And with those types of investment opportunities, if there's a mix, is there an arm wrestle between yourselves and your colleagues in residential auctions about who takes it on?
A little bit of an arm wrestle. We're all friends. Yeah, I think where it's really clear. So we have an empty hotel at the moment in Sussex, £2.5 million. Is that residential lot? Well, no, it's a commercial business, but they're wanting to sell it vacant. That could fit in either of the lists. There's a 70% crossover in our buyers, and something which is probably sitting in the middle gets marketed to both.
When you say 70% of crossover, what do you mean?
For every 100 buyers that I've got, the residential team will probably have 30 of those in common.
Got you. And obviously you're based in London, George. We're sat in Leeds today, the regional office of Allsop. We very much cover, we almost say everything else. Our London colleagues are very much London, South East, and a little bit just outside there.
Don't you let there's one little chap goes to Birmingham quite a bit.
Yeah. Will does like it. He does like it up there. So, but in terms of your auctions, you cover England, Scotland.
Yeah, England, Scotland, Ireland, Wales. Yeah. We covered the entire UK. We did a portfolio for William Hill recently, and it was 120 assets, mostly focused northeast, largely a lot of northwest, but also in Scotland, Glasgow, Edinburgh. So that was good.
Was that part of the single client auction?
Ah, yes, it was indeed.
Almost as if we prepared this question.
Yeah, so William Hill asked us. It seems we had a difficult 6 months, but it was only May this year we had an auction for one client. William Hill were looking at getting rid of a lot of their freeholds. In fact, they probably haven't got very many left, and we did a single auction for them.
So they were sale and leasebacks?
They were sale and leasebacks, yeah.
They were really useful, I think, in terms of the commercial vals team, because we obviously value quite a lot of...
Lots of little retail.
Yeah. So, very, very useful. When was the last client?
That was May this year, single client auction. I don't think we've done one. In fact, our first online auctions before lockdown were for a single client. First online auctions ever. So if lockdown was 2020, I would guess at 17 we did 2 auctions for one client.
Yeah.
Who were selling to try the online platform, which didn't really get a lot of traction. It worked, but it didn't get a lot of traction.
How did that one go?
The one in May this year?
Yeah.
That's great. We sold every lot.
That's fantastic to think you'd have, because I guess your catalogues are very varied generally.
Yes, they are, yeah.
And you might have, as you say, 100 buyers, and thankfully they'll spread across different lots. But you must be nervous going out with ultimately 35, was it 30?
It was 50.
Oh, 50 of the same, ultimately same lot. Okay, different locations, but similar.
It was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I worked with Tom Hansen actually on it, and we got quite a lot of data, and we did try to make pretty sure that the data was right. And I think we'd sold about 75 assets for William Hill up to that point in variable auctions. So these last 50 were priced on the basis of data. I think what was interesting about that is William Hill said, well, they rang us up and said, we've got some 50 more vacants, but we're just checking them out. And actually, what was really nice, because you see so much of the retail market, I go off on a tangent here, stop me if you want to, so much of the retail market, people are looking at suffering demand and rent is suffering, and what's the role of the high street shop? They went to look at this portfolio of 50 and said, well, actually, they do make quite good money. We're not going to sell them vacant. They were going to sell them vacant originally. But they decided to put 3-year leases or 5-year leases on them because they make good money out of them. So that's the rents weren't that strong, but it does give one faith in this tertiary retail that there is a market. And perhaps it's specific to bedding shops. I don't think it is.
What was the average sort of yield that they went for?
Do you know what? I think it's probably around 9%. Ciara, I'm guessing a bit because some will. I think we do one at 5.5% because it was just really hit the button. But because they were very short leases and the locations were not that great, it wasn't 10 million, but just short of 9.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
And something Ciara and I were talking about is covenant.
Yep.
Covenant strength.
Oh, yes.
In the resi world, it's not something we I guess we deal with it, but we don't say it as much as maybe in your world. What's a covenant?
Well, a covenant it's evolved actually, understanding a covenant is simply how can that tenant sustain that rental payment, yes or no? Are they substantial enough? Therefore, a grade A covenant, you would take the government, the Secretary of State for environment on a building, office building. That's a great covenant. They can afford the rent. We're not going to go bust as a country. In my world of largely dominated by retail, you've got everything down to the local tattooist. The local tattooist is paying 100 quid a week on a tiny, tiny shop. That's there. They can probably afford that. But the market's evolved as these high street rents have changed absolutely dramatically in the last, it's probably taken 20 years. The real estate is now as important as a covenant because a lot of the covenants, you'll see plenty of leases to Marks and Spencer's, grade A covenant, where the rent is, say, at £560,000 a year and it's actually worth 250. So you've got a great covenant with a very over-rented building. What investors want is a great building, and they're understanding our investors are quite sophisticated, so you can have a pretty weak covenant on the turnover rent in a really good building in a really good spot, and they'll bid quite competitively for that because they understand the value of the real estate. My market used to be a lot easier. It was about covenant length of lease, yes or no, because over-rented wasn't really a feature 20 years ago. I started nearly 30 years ago. That's evolved now. Covenant's clearly important. Length of lease is clearly important, but the over-rented nature is really impacting it. So therefore, people are picking out these better buildings. That's really important.
Yeah, that's fascinating. How have you seen the auction industry evolve in your time on the rostrum, and now not so much on the rostrum anymore?
No, not so much on the rostrum. I mean, so I started in 96, and it was very paper-based and rooms full of buyers, and it was obviously in a hotel room.
And a terrific buzz.
Terrific buzz, terrifying for a young auctioneer who thought he knew everything. It took me some time to work out I didn't. When I finally worked out I didn't know everything, and there were a few tricks to learn. Just absolutely huge fun. And I've had a lot of pleasure, a lot of fun with Will Clough. As he got on the rostrum in the latter years. It's evolved. I mentioned references earlier how we are pretty much we're turning into more of a platform. The auction process is absolutely essential to what we do. There's no discussion. The unconditional contract, full disclosure of information is really essential. And I think the tight deadlines are really essential. As to having someone waving their arms, in front of the screen, it adds something. There's no doubt about it. But at the moment, our buyers and our sellers are not asking us to look at anything other than what we have, which I think is, as a process, someone said to me last night, actually, where's the romance? Well, I keep romance for the weekend. Well, some nights during the week. But the business is incredibly effective. And when we have new clients joining in and say, well, I've heard this auction thing can work, it does. And sometimes they can't quite believe it works so effectively. So we think it works really well in its current format. I think that's going to remain for some time. The digitalisation and getting out of information really quickly is very valid. And that's been a tremendous help. Where's it going to be in 10 years? I think it's just an enhanced version of itself as it stands now. There's no question. And we may well have 1 or 2 live auctions a year. Don't know. If people tell us they want to do that, we can do that.
Is there sort of any weird and wonderful properties you have auctioned?
How long have you got? I thought we were going to have time limit, dear.
I did see, because you've got the December auction coming up, and I saw a shopping centre. I think it was Rochdale, which is a pretty big shopping centre.
The whole thing,
100,000 feet. Yeah, with the shopping centre, I mentioned earlier that the retail rents have fallen, and everyone knows that. We used to pretend it wasn't happening. It's happened. These are very difficult assets to put a figure on, and they've been on. How long Rochdale, whether it's been on the market for some time? I don't think it has. It's new to the market, but they realise this risk of repeating myself. Get the information right, get it published, get the pricing right, and you'll have buyers lining up. Because of the the fall away in value is the yield. So what I mentioned earlier, and you understand what yield is, the multiplier of the rent. In shopping centres, they're very difficult to manage, and they've had a bad track record. And you've got a whole new bunch of buyers who are buying very high-yielding assets. They really understand it. They really work it. And that's not the traditional shopping centre buyer, but there's lots of them who are buying these centres at 3, 4, 5 million. These centres were historically 10, 20, 30, 40 million, inaccessible for private propcos. The private propcos have all had a crack at buying one. Some have bought more than one. And because in essence, the private propco is really good at managing invoicing, managing money, they've fallen into these quite nicely. So we've sold 3 or 4 recently, and we've got Rochdale coming up, and I'm sure there'll be more. It's the definition of a commercial investor. Do we understand rent collection? Setting new leases, granting new leases, being flexible on getting the tenant mix right. And it isn't easy, but there are some people who are good at it. And we've got a good core of those as a base. And we will sell more shopping centres, I'm sure.
If you've got shopping centres at one end, let's say, and you've got your William Hills and you've got your betting shops, or
little tiny
we
ones.
talked briefly about weird and wonderful. Petrol stations, office space.
Petrol stations is a roadside thing that again, 20 years ago, people didn't look at petrol stations really because it was all about, oh my goodness, what are they going to pollute in the environment? Who pays for that? But the rise of the roadside is phenomenal. Rental growth on roadside use is very strong with your Costas and your Starbucks, and those very well established market. And sometimes those lot sizes aren't 5 million; they can be 1, 2 million, and we can really.
Is the building the covenant? And you were going back to before, and you said the building might become the covenant as opposed to.
Well, yes,
because
and that brings up another really good point, Jack, on rate per foot. Because my world of auctions used to be about zone A rents. Where's the growth? It's travelling at £30 zone A, £60 zone A. And you get hung up on that. Now we have to understand, what can Waterstones pay in that location, what feels right to them, and getting the rent right on a drive-through is quite hard because they're quite small units. They're small units because they're cheaper to build, and design's got better, so you can pack a heck of a lot of coffee production in a small space. Therefore, it may look like £50 a foot, may look ridiculous compared to a shop in the centre of Totnes at £20 a foot. But actually, the one on the outside of Totnes at £50 a foot is doing 3 times the trade, 4 times the trade. If it's a McDonald's, it might be trading 24 hours a day. So we have to get our heads into that, and our buyers understand that it's kind of unit rent for these drive-throughs. How do we get onto that? But we did. But they're from petrol stations.
Whoever's on the land teams of let's say X big supermarket around the corner from me, there is a Starbucks within the supermarket recently, and now a competing Costa has opened up in the car park. So Sainsbury's, have clearly leased space to Starbucks, but then also been willing to lease space that, frankly, out of the 150 car parking spaces they have. And these land property teams, someone's really cottoned on something good. Have you started to get some of those?
Well, we did. Morrison's did a package that one of our clients bought 2 years ago where they did just carve off 999 leases from their site. And the great thing about that sector, there's a line of people who want it. Therefore, everything starts, right, they want X many thousand square feet, X many parking spaces. The traffic engineers will get their head around the right scheme. And it's quite definable. And if, therefore, they think they can get £75,000 a year on a 20-year lease, they know that if they put a build cost of X into it, they can make a profit of Y. So it's quite definable, and it's a very certain market, and there's nothing like building into a strong market, and the occupier market is very strong. I'm probably talking quite fast here. But it's in my market with so much uncertainty, out of town, the rents are more certain, and particularly in these new drive-throughs. So therefore, it gives the Morrison's prop team, for example, a very good, solid basis on which to go to the board and say, we need to carve off these 50 sites because I've got buyers for them. It works a treat. Yeah, and it's about those corporates. I mean, Morrison's, that they had a lot of debt. They'll do anything they can to do some leasebacks, clever deals. One example of the corporate side of real estate, we touch with it sometimes, but not often.
What is the biggest lot you've ever sold?
I think the biggest price, when we've got 13 million for 2 assets in my experience. One was at the beginning of permitted development, where we had a vacant office building in Putney. It would be on the market. A client accepted a bid of 7.5 million, and the chap didn't exchange contracts. It went to auction. We got 13.25.
Wow.
Because that market was just taking off. People didn't quite know. A lot of overseas people knew they needed to be invested in permitted development. Permitted development was where empty office buildings were automatically granted consent for residential use, subject to a few caveats. And the other one was a big lump of Covent Garden, when the owner of Lady magazine, the family company, had been sold, and it was proposed to be splitting off the assets. So to get a call on 25,000 feet of Covent Garden on the market was quite exceptional for an auctioneer. But the owner had a good experience with us before. And again, that was £13.5 million sold at auction under the hammer. I remember going to lunch together. I had two buyers. As I came out of lunch, one of the buyers rang me up, said, I'm not going to buy it. But there's an Italian chap in the room, so we had two people fighting for that. So 13.5 million in one hit in 3 weeks. The client couldn't quite believe it. It's quite a lot. And there's obviously a lot of dissenting voices in the West End saying you should have sold it to me, you shouldn't have got them to do it. But no one thought it was going to be 13.5 million, and it worked very, very well.
Sorry, Ceara, I suspect no one... It has a history. I mean, maybe it doesn't have a history these days, but auction was the sort of gritty lot, wasn't it? The gritty property that couldn't be sold private treaty, but clearly not. Covent Garden could have been sold in the private treaty market all day long, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Pemberton, one of our partners, goes on about he can't wait for the day when his £25 million West End lots go to auction. What he means is for the market to accept, right, let's negotiate and I sailed an unconditional contract and do it without first round, second round, third round chipping. And this is where auctions do deal with the gritty properties, but also the gritty buyers. And at the moment, the gritty buyers are almost cash. You can't take much property to many funds and get them to buy it, but the grittiness is in the buyers. And we, as I said earlier, when they see something, these people in an Allsop auction, they know it's ready to go, so they can call us. And today, we launched a catalogue on Friday. My phone was ringing all the way down the M1 yesterday. Can I buy this? Well, the answer is yes. The data's there. Go do your DD, talk to me on Tuesday, Wednesday. And that is what we're really good. And Alex Butler, again, and my private treaty partner, he'll tell you that. He grew up in the auction team. He now runs a private client desk. These private individuals take some dealing with. They take some patience. And I think Allsop's train our team very well in that respect. Have you got property? Have you got money? Right, if you have, I'm staying on the phone till I got something out of you because that's why they're on the phone in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's the gritty buyer. Our lot size, we've sold up to £8 million one in December 22 in North London. It's very feasible.
Have you sold any sort of the weird and wonderful properties or?
I think Alex has just agreed. There's a church in Fulham we've just about to sell, hopefully, at just over 2 million. We don't. Weird and wonderful, probably, if we could apply it to the shopping centre with 56 leases, which has been on the market for 2 years, that's pretty weird and wonderful. But it's, I think the Resi team tend to get the water towers and and the defence bunkers and that sort of thing. And there are a couple of forts going to auction on islands in the Solent.
Wow.
And the Resi team have got those going out. So I wouldn't have any idea how to put a number on that.
No.
But what's fascinating is something, just picking up something you said before, George, and it links back to our database that we have as a company, and a bit sickening, I'm going to bang our drum again, but whether or not you've bought a 2-bed house in Burnley in our auction, or you bought a £4 million shopping centre, you find your way into a database of people that we're speaking to on every day. And we used to be in a place where, I was saying this earlier at lunch, where we might have, certainly in our team, we'd have 5 or 10 regular buyers. Obviously we'd also have other people, but the really dead cert buyers that would always get stuck in now. Whereas these days it is more, what's the term, off the wall. We're getting different guys out of that database that maybe have been on there for 20 years, have never bought anything. All of a sudden have seen a fort or a shopping centre and they've sort of stuck their head up and bought it. And I bet that the online sales side of things with pre-registering, I bet that's quite fascinating to see these people come forward.
It is, and it's all about data. Every industry, we all sign up an acceptance of terms every day on our phones. Yes, you can have my data. Or perhaps you don't. We're the custodians of a heck of a lot of data, 32 different data points in every asset. So we're getting better at using it, and hopefully we're not driving the registered buyers mad, but providing them opportunities. And I think that's what we're trying. That's our big drive. You asked me about the future of auctions, getting the data better. But of course, you're dealing with human beings. So they may want to buy a shopping centre in Rochdale one day, but then it'll be a industrial estate in Luton the next, which is quite hard to put data on. But so we do try.
We were sort of coming to the end. I think we absolutely wanted to ask you if you had, what should we say, 2.5 or 5 million?
Well, you can do 2.5.
If you had £2.5 million today, where are you investing it? Resi, commercial, petrol station, shopping
Sterling,
centre.
that is, isn't it? I had this chat with Jimmy Wilson earlier. Actually, he asked me the same question. I think that what I've learned in my 27 years of this is if you can diversify, and it's not just for the sake of it, it just makes sense. We know at 2.5 million there's less buyers competing with you in my market, so you might get better value. If I had to put it in one asset, it would be actually boringly well secured, unexciting, 20-year lease to supermarket, and that used to be 5.5%, it's now 7.5% probably, or 8%. That sort of operator, because everyone understands it. You don't have to worry so much about land values. If there's RPI increases in the leases, it is almost too good to be true. If you had to go down to 2 lots, you can't help but look at some of the shops and uppers. The resi market's suffering a bit. There is a bit of a discount in let residential, as you know. You've got to be quite careful because, of course, the regulations in residential, which is what our Resi Vals team keeps, Elaine's always on about this, the resi regulations, is hard. So I think that's why the market's been put off residential investment to a degree until it understands where these things are going to settle. But I would probably stick with the commercial market and I'd stick with retail and I'd just go for a long lease because the market's re-rated that from 5.5% to 7.5%.
Would you look at sort of multi-let industrial estate or?
Yeah, I think that's the domain of a very specialist investor, the pickup truck investor for an industrial estate. They're very, very good at it. I probably haven't got the application myself if it's my money. I'm not that brilliant in invoicing and admin, and to get 24 tenants all paying you every single time the right rent is not my forte. I can chat to them. I could be my best friend, but whether I'd actually milk it, I don't know, which is why I would go for probably that one tenant.
We'll have to get Richard Adamson on next, I think, to give the residential angle, because no doubt George is going to go. He can give it.
He can probably give a good commercial angle as well, I've told him.
And as well, George, I think the last question really we wanted to ask is, what is your advice for us for a successful podcast?
Well, I mean, I'm not quite sure. We developed a following of sort of 500, 600, 700 an episode, which we're sort of getting it right. I think we've got to keep it interesting. We've got to keep it live. I mean, you're interviewing someone experienced in the business, but let's look outside. I think you've got a tremendous client base. I mentioned in the Clarkey family earlier. I think they're a third generation of Allsop clients. They love us. They know us. They're good people. They're good operators. They make good money. I think the listening audience want to hear what these people are doing and how they're making money, how they're seeing the market. You've got to remember, I'm an agent. I sell property. So I have a view, and I've got a 27 years experience getting the operators who have been doing this, and interesting, the ones who are thinking about coming back or come back after a break. Now, that's really interesting. So why are they coming back now? Is it yield? Do they think the cost of finance is coming down? Do they think inflation is going to stay? I don't know. But I've always learned so much from those clients, probably the older ones. It's lovely talking to the new buyers. Every auction is 20% new buyers. I've just had 2 calls between here and the office to these new people, and it's why are they buying now? Sold a business is a classic thing. I want to get some real estate. But yeah, I think keeping it live, I think that's really hard. As an auctioneer, I'm prone to going on too much. But interesting guests who can challenge you. There's so much knowledge that you folks know, lots of people, loads of knowledge. Challenge away, because then we all learn, and it's so well. God, you can't go to bed without having learned something every day.
We'll take that on board. We'll have to,
definitely.
See if any clients are willing to come on and hand over their secrets.
Yeah.
George, thank you. Ceara, podcast at allsop.co.uk is the link.
Do keep people got some really interesting feedback on that. Podcasts at allsop.co.uk. Tell us what you think.
We're all on LinkedIn, as is Allsop. Connect with us. Questions. You've got a website, allsop.co.uk, and thank you for listening.
Thank you.